I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Welcome to another Monday's show. Our coverage has been a little spotty over the last couple of weeks, but that's because we've had some stuff going on with work. We had some stuff going on with the Woody's Precision Rifle Series match down in North Carolina, and now we're hoping to get back on track. This week, we are going to talk about the Woody's match, some of the stages, how I did, and what I could have done to do better next time. Well, Woody's is in New Hill, North Carolina, which is approximately a 10-hour drive from where I'm at right now, so it's one of the reasonable matches for us to shoot because we don't have to load into a plane, we don't have to fly cross country, we don't have to worry about baggage fees and all that stuff. We had a bunch of us here locally that decided to go out and shoot the match, and so we loaded up in a couple of vehicles and drove cross country, and really splitting the cost of one hotel room, one vehicle, and gas between the three guys that we loaded into our vehicle made it really reasonable. I think it ended up costing me, aside from the match entry fee, which was $175, it ended up costing me about $250, hotel, gas, and rental vehicle to shoot the match. Now, this is the first Precision Rifle Series match that Woody's has hosted. Woody's usually runs DMR type team matches. That seems to be what they're most known for. So this was their first dip into the precision rifle foray, and let me say right off the bat, they did an excellent job. There was a lot of moving parts to this, a lot of stages, a lot of complex setups, and they did a really good job of keeping guys moving through it, keeping things interesting, and most importantly, keeping things safe. With anytime you have this large a group, there were 111 shooters, I believe, total that registered for the match. 76 actually finished the match, shooting all stages and got ranked for a final score. So it's a lot of folks to run through a lot of different stages. We had, I believe, in total, I'll get my little pamphlet out here. We had 8 stages on the first day, and we had 5 stages on the second day. So that is a lot of stages to work guys through. That's a lot of setup, a lot of breakdown. And all the range masters that were out there, all the safety officers, they're all volunteers. So they did an excellent job, and I want to thank them for the very hard work that they put out to put this match on. Now, the match itself is held in New Hill, North Carolina, which was about 15 minutes away. We stayed at the match recommended hotel, which was the Holiday Inn in Apex, North Carolina, so just 15-minute shot down the highway. One thing that I really liked as soon as we got started on the match was when we initially registered, we were able to choose our squads. That made things great for those of us here because all of us here from Evansville, we all wanted to shoot in the same group. We shoot on a regular basis together at our local matches. It gives us the ability to help each other out when we're allowed to do so by the rules. It allows us to share gear. You know, if somebody's rifle breaks, you got guys that you trust that can fix stuff. So it's really nice to be able to stick together. And if you can do that when you register instead of having to email match directors and try to get things straightened out after the fact, it's great. So we went on their website, we registered, we all picked squad number 5, which that was an excellent idea by one of the guys that registered first, because as it turns out, when we got closer to the match, Woody's set up a staggered start time. Groups 1 through 4 had an early start time, groups 5 through 7 had a later start time. So what that allowed for us is we didn't have to get up at the crack of dawn and roll in to register and then stand around for a couple of hours until our squad started. We could get there later, we could get in, we can get registered, and we can get good to go. And that is really important for guys like me that first of all work second shift. I'm not a morning person, plus driving east meant we were starting an hour earlier. We're in an hour earlier time zone, so that makes morning come really early for me. So great on them for that. The only hang up with that was the first stage on the first day was the cold bore shot. Now obviously you can't switch things around and you can't have guys shoot another stage before they shoot a cold bore shot because it's not really a cold bore then. So everyone had to shoot the cold bore as the first stage. Well, ideally groups 1 through 4 would have shot the cold bore and then they would have been moved on shooting another stage as group 5 through 7 came up and shot the cold bore. North Carolina weather being what it is, and I was stationed in North Carolina for a very long time, so I understand how you get that nice lovely morning ground fog. Well, it was present on this nice cool North Carolina morning, and it prevented the first 4 groups from shooting that 200-yard cold bore until the fog had lifted. And that, of course, pushed the times on everything back, and pushed it back so that we did end up coming and registering and standing around for a little bit until we got a chance to shoot. But you know, it's weather, it's nobody's fault, and there really wasn't any way to work around it, so I don't have any problems with that. Plus, it gave me some time to make sure I had all my gear straight, that we had everything good to go. One of the guys in our group forgot something, so we did have to run back and grab it. So it straightened everything out, and we got started on a good foot. I was able to finish my cup of coffee, so I was in a really good mood starting off. Now, the first stage that we shot was our cold bore 200 yard. The target was this nifty little playing card. Now, this is an Ace of Spades from B&T Industries. You can go to their website, ussnipers.com, and you can get these nifty little guys. And they took these down to 200 yards, and they stapled them up on a black target board. Well, you notice that the Ace is black, the target board that was behind it was black, and this was 200 yards away with still a little bit of haze in the air. So seeing shot holes was not an easy thing, even with a 20 power Vortex Razor rifle scope. So I lined up behind my rifle. We were given our prep time. I did not realize that we could dry fire during our prep time, which I wish I had known, because I would have taken advantage of that. When it was time to fire, we went ahead and fired our shots downrange. I got off a really nice shot. I felt good about it. It broke clean, but then when I looked downrange, I couldn't see my shot. Because this is black and there's some details on it, it was really difficult to pick anything out inside the Ace. I could see that I didn't have any impacts in the white, but then there was a black area around the outside of the target. So if I went just a little bit off the card, I wouldn't have been able to see my shot either. So I was a little bit on edge. Everybody was kind of feeling the same way. If you didn't actually see a clean shot, then everybody was kind of doubting themselves, because this was worth a good deal of points. So I jumped up. There was a guy there with a loophole spotting scope, one of the Mark IV spotters, and I jumped on that and took a look down range, and I was fairly certain I was good, because if you notice, there's this neat little white ring that's about an inch in diameter, and right down here at the bottom I could see that the ring was broken, and when I looked at the cards to the left and the right, the ring was solid at the bottom, so I was pretty sure that I could see that shot hole. So I was happy. That is about a half MOA off of my point of aim, which my point of aim was the center of the crosshair, so I'll take a half MOA shot at 200 yards. So I'm sorry, that's a quarter MOA, because it's a ½ inch off at 200 yards. So quarter MOA off my point of aim. Pretty happy with that, although we didn't get to see these cards until the actual awards ceremony. They pulled them down, and the reason being is that in each squad, the best shot for each squad won a $100 gift certificate for B&T Industries, and the best shot overall, the closest to that little center out of the entire match, won a $300 gift certificate to B&T Industries. And that didn't matter where you finished in the match, it was just for this stage. And they actually ended up having 2 gentlemen that were so close on it that they were going to have a shoot-off. But it ended up, one of them conceded the gift certificate to the other one, class act, and they were good to go. I apologize because I didn't write their names down, and I've slept a couple of times since then. I would love to have given them an honorable mention, but unable to do so. So that was really cool, and that was great on B&T Industries. Now, the catch was you had to actually send the card in with the certificate, and B&T Industries, Casey's a great guy, he promised to send the cards back, because they said in the past guys have wanted to keep the cards so bad that they haven't sent the certificates in. So it is kind of a nice thing. You know, I wrote the information on the back of mine, and I'll stick that in my crap, and maybe years down the road my kids will pull it out and say, hey, that was pretty cool. So really neat stage, and of course that is the gold standard of accuracy, is the cold bore shot, knowing where your rifle is going to shoot. And this one is dead reliable. As long as I do what I'm supposed to do, this rifle performs. Throughout the entire match, the Accuracy International AE Mark II did excellent. I really couldn't have asked for anything more out of the rifle, and the Krieger barrel was just spot on. So if you need to buy a Krieger barrel from Mile High Shooting, no, it's going to be good to go. Of course, the scope worked absolutely perfect as well. Well, after we got done shooting the 200-yard cold bore shot, our next 200-yard stage was an egg stage. They actually had eggs glued to golf tees, and they stuck them in a 2x4 out there. And you had 2 shots to hit your egg. The first shot was worth 50 points. If you missed on the first shot and hit it on the second shot, that was worth 25 points. And the way they went down through it is everybody lined up on line, and they started from the far left, and they went to the first shooter and said, hey, shoot the far left egg. So he had a chance to shoot the far left egg. If he hit it, great, he got his points. If he missed it, he got his follow-up shot. If he hit it, he got his points. If he missed it, no go, he zeroed out the stage, and they went on to the next shooter. Again, they're moving to the right, and you had to shoot the egg furthest on the left. Well, of course, this is a pain in the butt because I was about middle of the way down the squad, and I couldn't really guess which egg I was going to have to shoot, so I didn't get a chance to snap in and dry fire on the egg I was going to shoot. And when it came down to me, I had to shift position and get on it real quick and then get ready to shoot it. And of course, you know, my luck being what it was, I missed both my shots, didn't blow the egg up, and had to go on. So I zeroed out that stage. Most of the guys, I think, did get their shot on the egg, and it was really cool to watch it because obviously you hit an egg with a high velocity rifle round and it just vaporizes. It goes boom. It's nothing's left there. A couple of guys did nick them and just make them fall apart, but if you got a solid hit on it, the thing just ceased to exist. Now, after we got done shooting the egg stage, we had one other paper stage, and that was the dot drill and the grouping drill, both at 200 yards. And we had a target set up like this, and what the goal was is under time, and I will tell you what our par time here was. Under time, we have 1 minute prep and 1 minute shoot time. We had to put one shot into each one of these 5 dots, and they are approximately 1 inch diameter, and again at 200 yards. If you got, each dot was 10 points. If you got 3 dots, you got an additional 10 points. If you got 4 dots, you got an additional 20 points. And if you got all 5 dots, you got an additional 40 points. So there was quite a bit of points that you can pick up here. Now you might think that when I did this, that this would be fairly easy. Well, here's a great example of believe what you see out of the rifle, because this is actually what I shot, and this is absolutely horrible. I only pulled 1 point out of this, and I started up here, shot this and was off, thought okay, maybe I pulled it because obviously my cold bore was good. Shot the next one, pulled it, nope. Shot this one, nope. Really concentrated on my shot, broke this, said okay, I'm screwing up here. I shifted over 2/10 and cut the edge. So if I had realized, okay, that was a great shot, I broke that clean, made my adjustment, I would have picked up 4 points or 4 dots off of that and got some extra points. But since I was doubting myself, I was doubting what was going on, I missed some shots. So that was pretty bad. And I think that kind of rattled me, because when we went on to the next stage, which was our 7-shot grouping drill, 1 minute prep time, 1 minute shot time, I only got 4 of my shots inside of the group, and I threw a couple out here. And again, this is at 200 yards, and that's a 1.5 inch dot. So, you know, the shots are still under 1 minute angle, but they weren't good enough here. I needed this little tiny group in here. That was probably me rushing the shots and not paying attention to my fundamentals of marksmanship. So that was all the stuff that we did at 200 yards. Once we got done there, then it was time to go out and shoot the fun stuff. Now, it's kind of funny because while we were waiting, we got done with the paper stage, we had to wait for another crew to clear the next stage that we were going to go on. So we're sitting there just BSing, and we saw guys coming down the road, and they were just covered in mud, just from middle of the chest down, covered in this nice, lovely, thick Carolina clay and mud mix. And a couple of them stopped and asked us, hey, where are you going next? And they told us that the lagoon was going to be fun. Now, the lagoon gets its name because there's actually a standing body of water there, which is covered or surrounded by a dike. The firing position for the lagoon stage was on one corner of the dike, and they had gotten a ton of rain the Friday night before the match, and there was standing water everywhere. Well, the firing point for the lagoon was basically a mud puddle, and they said had about 2 inches of standing water in it. So we were really looking forward to that. Of course, it was a cold Carolina morning, so I was Gore-Texed up head to toe. That way I could lay on the wet ground and not have it soak through and chill me out. We got over to the lagoon stage, and thankfully all those lovely guys shooting in squads 1 through 4 laid down in that mud puddle and soaked all that water up for us. So all we had was a nice soft clay pad. Didn't really stick to us, just got a little bit of dirt on your clothes. But thanks to guys in squads 1 through 4 for taking care of that mud puddle for us. Now, there was a lot of mud around it. We were slogging through mud when we were up on the dikes, walking to and from, but the spot that you actually had to lay in, they cleaned up nicely. Now, the lagoon stage was the first of our handgun stages. Now, I'm going to tell you these stages in the order that my squad shot them. They were switching people around, so different squads shot these stages in different orders. But for us, it was the first handgun stage, and the goal of the lagoon stage is we started with 6 pepper popper pistol targets down at the bottom of the dike. You had to engage those targets, and then you would sit your pistol on the barrel that they provided, and then run up the hill with all the gear that you needed to shoot the stage, drop down into a firing position, and then there were 6 steel flasher targets. Now, these flasher targets are kind of cool. They're like a little lollipop inverted on an axis, and it had a flag behind it. And they work kind of like MGM flashers, but they're their own homebrew type. When you hit the target, as long as you hit it low enough, it will rock the target back, and the flag will come up, and you'll see the fluorescent painted flag. So if you hit the target and move it, they can see that flag come up and see that you've actually hit it. So guys that were shooting lighter calibers, as long as they moved it a little bit, they would see that impact. So even if the wind's up, even if you couldn't hear it or see the splash, as long as it moved, you would get points for it. The targets that we had to engage were ranging from 144 yards out to 365 yards, and they were 6-inch and 8-inch flashing targets. So the actual diameter you had to hit was 6-inch and 8-inch. Now, there was a little bit of a trick on the stage. You shot your 6 pistol targets, you ran up the hill, you got into your firing position, but if your firing position was too far to the right, then you have one of the targets, the 406-yard target, was obscured by a tree branch hanging out. In addition, the 207-yard target was actually down a decline, and there was a good stand of grass that was covering most of the target, and actually part of the target was down behind the dirt. So if you're laying in a good low prone position, you could barely see the top of the target, but you definitely couldn't engage it with any kind of reliability. Now, some guys that were shooting some really heavy bullets could skip them through and get them through the brush and all that crap and hit it, but a light 107 isn't going to do it. I have to actually hit a target. So that target, you had to come up to a sitting, a kneeling, or some other position. This is where some of the gamesmanship came in, because our group, going out there, when we read the rules, it said for this stage you have to carry everything with you that you needed to shoot. We understood that as everything you needed for the match you had to carry with you. So I didn't really want to drag around a big heavy tripod. However, once we actually got out there and realized what the rules were, was that for that stage, moving through the stage, you had to carry everything you needed to shoot that stage. So you could leave other crap in the van, in the cars, staged with your gear, stacked in a pile, whatever you wanted. You just had to make sure that the stuff that you needed to shoot that stage was attached to your body. Now, had I known that going into it, this little guy would have come along with me. And this is an Alamo 4-star DCLW tripod, and it's a really nifty, fairly lightweight setup, and you guys have seen us do some video on this before, that allows me to clamp the rifle into the top of it, kick these legs out, get a nice solid shooting position, and it goes up fairly high. I can get up to a high kneeling with this thing, and that would have allowed me to clamp to the bottom of my rifle even while it was slung on my back, run up there, drop it down, and shoot the entire stage, all targets, from 144 yards out to 412 yards from the sitting position, and that would have just rocked. So had we looked a little bit deeper and read a little bit more critically into the rules, I would have rolled with that thing. And there were actually 2 other stages where that would have helped me out as well. So going forward, you can bet that I'll be carrying that tripod with me out to all these matches. Now, when I shot it, as I said, I dropped in. I got my position a little bit far to the right because I was able to engage the 144-yard target. When I went up to shoot the right side, I shot the 300-yard target, the 365-yard target, no problem. I was getting first-round hits on all those targets. Bounced back, shot the 412-yard target, came back in to the 406-yard target, and wouldn't you know it, there's a tree branch hanging right across it. I went ahead and sent a couple of rounds down range trying to punch through it. I think I hit the tree branch a couple of times, and again, I'm shooting 107 grain Match Kings through this thing. They're traveling about 2970, so hitting pine needles is not going to be good for their accuracy down range. The tree was located right about 200 yards down range, so I had, even going through those pine needles, the bullet still had to go on more than 200 yards beyond that tree before striking the target. So it took me a couple of rounds before I realized I just wasn't going to be able to do it. I had to go ahead and shift my position over to the left, went ahead and whacked that target, came up to my sitting position, got into a nice tight slung sitting position, got ready to rack the next cartridge in, and my time ran out. So on that stage I ended up 1 target down, got all my other targets, was good to go, and it was a learning experience. Even though you go into a stage thinking that there's not a whole lot that guys are going to be able to do to game it, you'll have gamers game it. And we did see guys go up there, set up tripods, shooting sticks, all kinds of stuff. We saw guys try to shoot it from offhand, but really seated with a tripod was about the best way to shoot that stage. And we would revisit that stage a little bit later on Sunday as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute. After we got done with the lagoon, we went ahead over to the pole, which the appropriate name for that stage was Sniper and Hide Being Overrun. This was another pistol/rifle stage, which throughout Woody's match, pistol played a big part into this. If you didn't hit your pistol targets, you really would not do well in this match. Now, the Sniper and Hide Being Overrun stage, it started you off with engaging steel at varying distances from 195 yards all the way out to 490 yards. You had 6 steel targets that you had to engage, and again, these are the flasher targets, so vary in diameter from 6 to 8 inches, and you had to hit all these targets before you could engage your handgun targets. Once you shot all of your 6 rifle targets, which were unlimited rounds, I believe, no, I take that back. They gave you 10 rounds rifle. So you had 10 rounds rifle, 10 rounds pistol to do this. Once you shot all your rifle rounds, you then had to pick up your pistol, you had to chamber a round into it, and then you had to engage the 6 close pepper popper targets. And you had to put all 6 of the pepper poppers down. Now, if you failed to drop any of those pepper poppers, you ran out of ammunition, you ran out of time, etc., then you got a negative 10-point penalty for every target that you failed to neutralize. So you can see how that would add up really quickly if you didn't get those down. This stage, I came across it, I shot it clean, I got all my points, hit all the targets, so I came off it actually feeling fairly good. I actually managed to do what I came there to do. And things were starting to look up for me. I figured I might actually be able to crawl my way back up. Although with my performance in the morning, there was no way I was going to break back into the top 10. When you're shooting with this level of shooters, when you cripple yourself that bad right out of the gate, you just don't have enough stages to be able to crawl back. But as we see later on in the day, that just wasn't going to happen anyway. After we shot that stage, we went to the next stage, which just really kicked my butt, and it was Sniper on the Run was what this one was called. And this one was kind of the reverse of the previous, the Hide Overrun stage. What you had to do on this one is, again, you're carrying all the gear that you need to actually shoot the stage. So you have your rifle bolt closed on an empty round. When you're told, you insert a magazine into the rifle and sling it. You could sling it cross-body, you could sling it across your back. I just slung it over one shoulder because I know this rifle rides very well when I sling it that way, and it's quick to get it back off my shoulder. With this long barrel, I didn't really want it poking down in front of me in case I tripped and fell. I don't want to spear a muzzle with no break into the ground and then have problems with dirt getting packed back into the muzzle. So I'd sling it on my back, muzzle up. You started handgun loaded in your holster, and you put your hands on handprints that they had painted on the side of this old decrepit Jeep sitting there. There were 6 pepper poppers stationed around the Jeep on the far side. You had 2 that you could engage from the front. You had 2 that you had to engage through the middle of the Jeep, through the windows that had been rolled down. And then you had 2 at the back of the Jeep that you could engage. Once you shot those 6 targets, you had to run about 20 yards to another firing point. Now, I cleaned the 6 pistol targets very easily. They're really close range targets, and I'd actually been shooting IDPA and training for IDPA, so taking down those pistol targets was not that big of a deal. But then I sprinted as hard as I could sprint to the next firing point because you're on the clock, and on this one, we only had 210 seconds to get the job done. 210 seconds is not a lot of time when you have to do pistol, move, and then shoot rifle. Once we got to the next firing point, it was a picket fence type barricade that had a landscaping timber set behind it. And the landscaping timber was only a couple feet from the picket fence, and you had to lay in the box that the fence and the landscape timber made. So what you ended up with was your body was at a 90-degree angle to the bore of your rifle when you're pointing down range. Now that was a little bit of a difficulty, but what made it even more difficult, I later found out, was they had taken another barricade and they had put it at a right angle to the first one, blocking you from the wind. So you had no wind cues, and we're shooting over a field that was relatively low grass. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there to catch a wind call off of. When I ran out there, I was so concentrated on making sure that I got my dope dialed in, got down behind it and started engaging targets, and I only hit 2 of the rifle targets before I timed out. I just started slinging rounds. I wasn't getting good feedback, and I was not getting a good wind call. Up to that point, because you're shooting the same orientation, the same kind of range of targets as the previous stage, I did just fine on the previous stage in 5 to 12 mile an hour gusting winds. But with those same 5 to 12 mile an hour gusting winds, now when you drop down behind a windbreak and you can't feel that wind pushing on you, it makes it very hard to determine what the wind speed is and what your wind call should be downrange. And with the compressed time limit, you don't have time to get over here and start jacking with your parallax to try to see that mirage, to try to get a really good idea. So it was really one of those you just have to run off the instinct and try to spot your splashes when you miss the target. And splash, you could see on some of them were just soft ground or the ground already been beaten up around them and they were absorbing bullets and not showing you any splash at all. So it was an interesting stage. It really identified to me that I need to practice more from that position, from the 90-degree position, because we concentrate so much on getting straight behind the rifle that sometimes when we go out and train, we neglect getting our position all kinked up and shooting from messed up positions, which a lot of matches will require you to shoot from suboptimal positions. So something to think about when you go out and do your own training. After the sniper on the run, we went down, and our last two stages for the day were the wall and the roof prop. The next stage that my squad shot was the roof prop, and Woody's really went above and beyond on this roof that they built out there. It was rather large. It was enough that you could have probably put 3 guys across the top of it with room to spare. Very well constructed, and it was just like your roof at home. It was a decent pitch for a regular residential roof, and it had what looked to be relatively new shingles on it. So it really replicated what you would actually feel shooting across a rooftop. Now the target that we had to engage, this was kind of a modified know your limits kind of stage. The targets were at 600 yards downrange, and they consisted of a 6-inch, an 8-inch, and a 10-inch flasher type plate. Again, when you hit them, a little flag would come up, but you had to make sure that you actually hit the plate or hit them low, because if you hit them high, really close to the axis, they wouldn't move enough to bring the flag up. And I found that out the hard way. You were given 120 seconds for the roof to get up, get into position, fire your 5 shots, and be done. Now you were only allowed 5 shots, and you could choose which plates to fire those 5 shots at. You could fire 2 on one, 3 on another, all 5 on one, however you wanted to do the mix. But the trick here was the points values on the plates. The large plate was only worth 10 points. That's a 10-inch plate. The intermediate plate, the 8-inch plate, was worth 20 points, and the small 6-inch plate was worth 50 points. So if you were confident in your abilities to hit a 1-minute angled target at 600 yards in the wind from a messed up position, then you could come off with quite a few points on that stage. So obviously that was the ideal thing to shoot. And I learned a couple of things on shooting on this stage because I've shot roofs differently in the past, watched a couple of shooters go ahead of me, and what I had decided to do on it is go ahead and put my bipod legs all the way out, completely deployed. And this is one instance where I would have done better if I had, well, I can't say I would have done better, but the setup would have been a little bit better if I had the leg extensions for the Atlas bipod. So that may be something I'll look into in the future. But I had the Atlas fully extended, and I had it on the forward edge of the roof, the forward crown of the roof. The center of the rifle, I had basically sitting on the crown of the roof, and then I used a tactical pillow to anchor my arm and give me some elevation to hold the rear of the rifle. And that really gave me about 3 points of contact, and it was a really steady position to shoot the rifle from. It was almost as stable as shooting the rifle from a bench once you got up there and actually got your body in and got used to the feeling like you were sliding down the roof. The unfortunate part about this is I actually took a 0 on the stage. I shot and they were good shots. I was feeling like I was shooting good. I started out trying to hit the center plate to go for a little bit higher points value. I was missing the center plate. I switched over to the large plate and was sending shots down range and just really was not getting anything. And due to the position we were at and the way we were sitting there and the environment, I wasn't really able to spot my impacts or hear any impacts out there. I wasn't seeing anything kick up in the dirt, so I had no idea what was going on. When I came off the stage, the spotter told me that I was high for all my shots. I was actually hitting towards the top edge of the plate. More than likely, I was impacting the right in front of the axis, which wouldn't activate the plate at all. Kind of thought that was strange because I knew the 600-yard dope for this rifle was good to go. So, step back off, try to work out what was going on, and the rest of my squad shot, and almost the entire rest of my squad was also high. We figured it out, and we were about 2/10 high. So all of us were shooting about 2/10 of a mil high on those targets. Well, we just kind of let that one rest. Weren't really sure why all of us were shooting high, and went on to the next stage. The next stage was the wall, which was a modified barricade. It's a really big steel barricade. We didn't know it was steel at first because it's painted brown. It looks just like a wood barricade. In fact, I didn't really realize it was a steel barricade until I went up there and drove my rifle into it and heard it ring when my magazine seated against the front edge of the barricade. For the wall, we shot the exact same targets that we shot for the roof at the same yard line. It was 600 yards is what they told us. And we had to shoot, again, 5 shots, any order we want, and the points value was the same. We were only given 90 seconds for this because we didn't have to climb up on a roof. You just started a few feet behind it, ran up, threw your rifle down the barricade, and fired your shots until time was up or until you ran out of bullets, or until you fired your 5 shots, rather. So again, my time came. I ran down there. Really not any trick to shooting barricades like this. What I like to do is I go ahead and make sure my bipod is folded forward so it's ahead of the rifle so I don't have anything to hang me up. I'll run a 10-round magazine, which gives me a real nice lip back here, and I'll drive the magazine into the barricade, and I will lean into the back of the rifle to pin it against the barricade. Now, I do this with the Accuracy International because I've shot it this way quite a bit, and I know I don't have any feeding problems. Recoil against the magazine isn't going to cause the magazine to fall out. It's not going to cause any damage to the gun. The magazine is very well supported inside the chassis system. I don't recommend this if you have never tried it before on your gun. Make sure you go out to any kind of training and do that. Drive the magazine in hard and make sure you're not going to have any chambering issues, you're not going to have any double feeds, and you're not going to knock your magazine out or damage the magazine on the system. Another good reason to run steel Accuracy International magazines, because you can really bang them up and not really hurt anything. This one, again, I was getting really good shots, I thought. I was going for the big one because I had such an abysmal failure on the previous stage. I wanted to try to recover at least some points, and I managed to only get 1 impact. And the 1 impact was my last shot because I was getting tired of missing, and so finally I said, okay. He said I was hitting high. I aimed at the bottom of the gong, fired, hit it. So we figured out again, the 2/10 high was a good call. Everybody was running 2/10 high. I just didn't believe the gun early enough to do something about it. Hopefully you guys are seeing a repeat occurrence here, a pattern develop. Believe the gun. If you think you did your job correctly and the gun is showing you something different, fix it. It's not going to come back and the gun's not going to get mad at you because you changed something on it. So believe it. But the key to that is knowing that you did what you were supposed to do. I have a bad habit of, I know this is a very accurate rifle, so when I shoot it, if something goes wrong, I generally blame myself. It's difficult for me to go, okay, I was shooting with good form, the rifle's shooting well, so the effect I'm seeing must be environment, or it must be something outside of us, and I need to make a correction based on that. It's still something that I have to work into shooting matches. Because again, the level of accuracy that you need in these matches is well beyond the level of accuracy that you really need in a real world law enforcement or military environment. So those are the last 2 stages for the day. As I said, I came away feeling pretty inadequate after shooting those. Although on those 2 stages, there were a ton of zeros on the scorecard, which makes us believe that there was something else going on, possibly that the range wasn't correct. One of the safety officers there said that there was a wind that was coming straight down the range that we couldn't see, although I don't believe the type of wind that would possibly have been occurring would have accounted for that much of a difference at that range. And again, with all of us, regardless of the calibers that we were shooting. So I think there may have been something else working out there. But as I looked down the score sheet at the end of the match, even some of the front runners zeroed out on those stages. So there was something else going on there on those stages. I don't really have a problem with that though, because there wasn't any trickery. It was an equal difficulty level for everyone that was involved. There wasn't any secret. It wasn't like it was one range for us and somebody else told somebody else that it was a different range. We all had the same problems, and some of us that got higher points recognized it earlier and corrected the issue. That was it for the lessons on day 1. Day 2 started off on Sunday bright and early in the morning, and we rolled out the first drill that Squad 5, my squad, was assigned to, was a range estimation drill. And I really enjoyed this drill. I didn't do as well on it as I would have hoped, but I really enjoyed it. The way they ran the drill is we had 6 targets. They were LaRue targets. Some were 10-inch LaRue circles. We actually had 2 10-inch LaRue circles, and then we had 4 regular 20-inch LaRue silhouette targets, and they were scattered out about the property that we were shooting on, and they had IDPA or IPSC silhouette targets next to them with a number written on them. They handed out pieces of notebook paper. You put your name and your shooter number at the top of the notebook paper, and then they gave you time to glass the area and make sure that you could locate all the targets, as long as you weren't doing it with your rifle scope. You could do it with binos, or you could do it with whatever you had at hand. You just couldn't actually start measuring the targets at that point. There were no laser rangefinders allowed, no any kind of optical rangefinders on it, but to do your range estimation, you could use whatever calculating means you had at hand. It could be manual, it could be electronic, it could be an iPhone, it could be a program, an app, whatever you want. You just couldn't use laser rangefinders or any kind of rangefinder built into your scope. When the time began, which we had 240 seconds total, you got down behind your rifle, you glassed the target, you measured the target with your reticle, did your range computation formula, wrote down what you believe the range to be on your piece of paper, and then when time expired, you handed that piece of paper in. I went ahead and I used the rangefinder section of the Ballistic AE app in my iPhone. That worked. However, I believe I would have been quicker if I just went ahead and used my MilDot Master, which one of the other shooters that went out there with us, he used his MilDot Master and it worked fine for him. We already knew the size of the target, so it was a simple matter just to plug in your mils that you were seeing through the scope plus the size of the target to get the actual range to it. Now the range to get your points had to be within 5%. If you got the range within 5% of the actual range to the target, then you would get 5 points for that target, with a possible 30 points if you got all of them correct. When time was up, you handed your sheets in, they graded them and handed them back, and I only got one that was within that 5 percentage points. I thought that was kind of funny, but only got one. I never actually got the exact ranges to the target, so I can't tell you how close each of my range estimations were. But I know they were fairly close on the 5 targets that I could see. Now the trickery on this one was there was a 6th target, which was actually our furthest target, which I believe was somewhere out around 900 to 1,000 yards. And it was just over the backside of a hill. All I could see from prone was the top head of the marker for where the target was at. So it wasn't actually a piece of the target, it was just the marker board with the number on it where the target was at. So I didn't even attempt to range that one because I would have had to come up out of a prone position. I would have had to do it from either a sitting position or kneeling or something of that matter. Again, Alamo tripod would have been excellent for that. I could have done the entire thing with the rifle locked in to a sitting position. So going forward, again, great piece of gear. I didn't get that 6-1 range, so I handed my stuff in, got it back, got 1 out of the 5 that I did range correct. Thought that was kind of funny because when it came back to my time to shoot, I hit all 5 targets that I could see with my first round hit. Now when it came time to shoot them, you got 2 rounds for each target. If you hit it on your first round, you're good. You got your full points value, which was 50 points for a first round hit, and you went on to your next target. If you missed with your first shot, you fired a second shot, and if you hit, you get 25 points. If you missed, you go on to the next target, you get a 0 for that target. So I hit all 5 that I had ranged with first round hits, so I got 50 points for each of those 5. I was feeling real good at that point. In fact, good enough that when I got done, I still had time left out of the 120 seconds that we had to engage the targets. And I went ahead and just guesstimated based upon where I could see the target board, and I slung one at the far target. I just kind of used some Kentucky windage and guessed on the elevation and ripped it down range. Missed with the first one. Of course, they're standing behind me and they're standing up with binos so they could actually see if the target went down or not. Fired the second one, missed with the second one. When I got done and stood up, they told me I just barely missed the target with the second shot. With no good dope on it, no good idea on where it was at, just slinging a bullet down range. So again, felt pretty good coming off that stage with 250 points. Didn't do bad at all. Now that was pretty much the end of my good stages for Sunday. Once we got done shooting the range estimation drill, we went ahead and walked back over to the lagoon for the boat simulator. The boat simulator was actually a really cool piece. It's about an 8-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood that is set on a metal frame and suspended by chains from the ground. So there was some movement to the platform when you got onto it. They changed around the pistol targets so that you had 2 IDPA or IPSC size silhouettes that were at the base of the dike that we were on. You had a pistol shooting position that was halfway up the dike, and you had a pistol shooting position that was at the top right next to the rifle firing position. Now again, they like to give you choices so that you can try to game the stage best to your abilities. And this was one of those. You were giving 5 rounds in your handgun, and you had to engage each of the 2 pistol targets with 2 rounds apiece. So you had to fire 4 rounds, and you were given 1 extra just in case. You could choose if you wanted to either shoot at the lower pistol firing position, which was closer to the pistol targets, making hitting the pistol targets easier. But then you would have to run up the dike to the rifle firing position, get on the boat, and shoot on this moving platform. Or you could take the pistol position at the top of the dike, which gave you a longer pistol shot, but again, these are full-size plate targets, fairly large. And then it gives you just a couple of feet to move to drop down behind the rifle position. I chose to go ahead and engage from the upper pistol position because the position that I had to shoot to was still far less than our qualification distances on a smaller scoring zone for our duty qualification course. So I knew shooting my nice new Glock 17, I wasn't going to have any problems hitting those targets, and I wanted to save the time from the movement up the hill, and I wanted to have a better or a lower respiration and heart rate when I got on and had to engage the rifle targets. My problem was that was where my rehearsal in my brain of how I was going to run the stage stopped. I didn't go through and mentally rehearse the rest of the stage, which the rest of the boat stage was exactly the same as the lagoon stage that we started on Saturday. That bred complacency in my game plan, and I didn't go all the way through it. So when it came time, I went ahead and I cleaned the pistol stage. I had 1 round remaining, and they told you they wanted you just to dump that last round off the targets if you didn't need it to engage the targets. So engage the 2 targets, dump my last round, set my empty pistol down on the barrel, rolled into my rifle firing position, got on the boat, which it was shaking around a little bit. And the rules on the boat were that you could use your limbs to steady yourself. So you could stick your feet down and touch the ground, which is what most people did. But you had to lift them, and you had to be relying on nothing but the platform when you fired the shot. So you couldn't drag your feet when you fired the shot. You could drag your feet to stabilize the platform and then lift them and fire the shot. So I drug my feet, got lined up on my first target, the 144-yard target, lifted my feet, drilled it. At this time, the second target was clear enough that you could see it. It was high enough we could engage it, but there was still some grass and stuff going on, so I chose to go ahead and skip past that. I rolled up to the 406-yard target, which now should have been clear of the branch, but they hadn't repainted the targets from the previous day. The previous day, the target stands were painted a nice fluorescent green, so they were really easy to find them. Because I hadn't gamed it through, I hadn't looked at the stage and mentally programmed where each of the targets were before I ran it. When I jumped on the scope and looked, I didn't see a target. I spent time searching for the target, which was time that I really needed. I gave up searching for the 400-yard target. I called out to the spotter that I was going to the 300-yard target, which was on the other side, switched over to what I thought was the 300-yard target, got a good set on it, set loose a round, saw the round impact, and saw the flasher come up. They didn't call a hit, which now this broke my OODA loop, this broke my mental chain, and caused me to stop. I was trying to figure out why they didn't see it, if I needed to engage it again. So I repeated to them that I was shooting the 300-yard target. About that time, my time ran out, and I realized what happened. I hit the 360-yard target thinking it was the 300-yard target. The spotter was looking at the 300-yard target. It was right on the point of the tree line. I had skipped right past it, engaged the 360-yard target, and because I'm shooting a nice flat 243, even though I was using my 300-yard dope, I hit that 360-yard target and caused it to flash. I actually probably caused it to flash better because I'm sure I hit it low on the plate. And so I really blew that stage out of my rear. I ended up only scoring one rifle hit because although I hit the 360-yard target, because it was not the target I called, they didn't want to give me credit for it. And I can respect that. I shot the wrong target. So rolled off of that just really doing poorly. And I knew exactly why I did poorly. The biggest part of that was I was socializing. I was back, gabbing with the girls instead of actually programming the stage into my head. You're there with your friends, there with guys that I don't see very often, some guys that I do, and you like to BS, and we're back talking about things other than shooting. When prior to the stage, all I should be thinking about is how I'm going to run the stage, what order I'm going to shoot the targets in, what dope I need to shoot each one of those targets, and how I'm going to go about that. Once you're done shooting the stage and you come off, that's the time to gab about it, to offer other shooters tips about how well you did or how horrible you did, but not before you shoot the stage. So just going forward, know if you see me out at a range and I haven't shot a stage yet and I'm not real talkative, it's not because I'm pissed off with you, it's not because I don't like you, it's not because I'm an ass. It's because I'm gaming the stage through in my head and I need that to be able to perform well. It's a lesson that I had learned long ago. It's a lesson that I didn't use at this match, and it's a lesson that cost me dearly. So I will remember that going forward. So just know that. If I don't seem real talkative right before stage, that's why. Feel free to hit me up after the stage or after the day is over, and I love to talk to people about shooting rifles. Now, after we shot the lagoon stage and the boat simulator, it was time to roll on down to our next stage, our second to last stage on Sunday. It was called Escape and Engage. And it started in the same position that we shot the wall and the rooftop, but this time you started back in the woods, and they had 4 steel pistol poppers set up along the trail in the woods. And you had to start from a position back in the woods with your rifle, magazine in, bolt closed on an empty chamber, your pistol loaded with 6 rounds, and only 6 rounds. And you had 15 rounds and only 15 rounds on the rifle. Your pistol was holstered with a round chambered, and you had to put your hands up on this tree limb that was kind of falling down, and that was your start position. You had to be ready to go. You had to be standing behind the they had a start line set there. When they said go, drew your pistol, and you could engage the 4 pistol targets however you liked. You could stop and shoot them, you could shoot them on the move, however you decided to go through it. Now at this time I had realized I needed to quit messing around with my head, and I actually needed to get my head back in the game. So I went ahead and walked through, when we were given the chance to walk through, said exactly where I was going to shoot each one of the pistol targets. I decided that my fastest route was going to be as soon as I got the go signal, leaned to the side so that the pistol targets were clear of trees, because they actually were back in the trees, and hit my first 2 pistol poppers, and then run to just before the fault line for the handgun. They had a barrel set there to sit your handgun on, so that was a point that I knew if I stood next to the barrel, I could see the 2 last poppers and get clean shots on them. If you tried to hit them on the move, you had to thread in and out of trees, and there's a really good chance that if I tried to hit those targets on the move, I was going to shoot a tree and waste one of my rounds. So ran to the barrel, hit my last 2 poppers from standing next to the barrel, set my handgun down, and ran over to the rifle firing point. Now for this stage, the rifle firing point was a chain that was hung between 2 solid metal posts. On the chain was a rubber hose, so it protected your rifle from the chain. But the rule for the stage was you could use whatever position you wanted, you could shoot the rifle however you wanted, but the chain had to be touching the bottom of the rifle stock. Before, when one of the other squads was going through, I sat and watched them for quite a bit. They were using tripods. They would go up there, set the tripod in, set the rifle on the tripod. So the tripod was providing the support, and then they would grab the chain, which had some slack in it, and pull the chain up and hold the chain against the bottom of the rifle forend while they shot the stage. So really, really gaming it. But I watched how long it took these guys to get up there and set the tripod in. And on this stage, we're still shooting at 600 yards, but we're shooting a 10-inch flasher at 600 yards. So it's a relatively large target, and the chain was an extremely solid shooting position to go off of. So when it was my turn, I ran up there. I just dropped the rifle right down on the chain, drove the magazine into the chain, leaned all my weight into it from a double kneeling position, and I was able to get a really steady position. I cleaned all my pistol targets. I was able to get 3 hits on steel until my time ran out. So I came off of that stage actually feeling fairly good, even running it without a tripod or without shooting sticks or without any of the other crazy stuff I saw some of the other guys do. Now I really would like to have been able to go back and shot that with the Alamo 4-star tripod and see if that would have given me an advantage. It may have, but it also may have cost me time, and if I had more time, I could have gotten more hits even the way that I did it. So we finished that out, and that was the second to last stage. Now the last stage that we shot was the house stage, and it's what I feel was probably the most technically difficult stage that we shot the entire match. There were only 3 targets, and the time period was relatively generous, but what you had to do is shoot 3 targets of unknown distances from a mock hide built in the second story of a house. Now this was actually a real house. It was unfinished. It just basically had stud walls and things roughed in, but it was a real house, and they had built an elevated platform in the attic slash second story that brought you up almost even with the windowsill. So it was a really steady platform, really stable. You could jump up on it really easily. Now they gave us the size of the targets ahead of time. They brought us up into the hide during the range briefing, and they allowed us to look out and glass the targets. Now you couldn't glass the targets with anything with a reticle in it, so I couldn't use my monocular. I had a Vortex monocular with me with a range-finding reticle in it. They loaned me a set of binoculars, so I was able to look out and see where the targets were located. That allowed me to program into my brain which targets I was going to engage, in what order, and where they were located at. They then gave us the size of the targets. We were going to shoot a 10-inch LaRue, a 20-inch LaRue, and then they had a 24-inch silhouette way down towards the end of the property. And we all could guess that that was approximately 1,000 yards, just looking at it all the way to the end of the property. A lot of people did guess, and they guessed really closely. The time limit for this stage was 3 minutes total, so it's a lot of time for 3 targets. Once you actually get up there and get into position, you figure you probably have at least 40 seconds, 50 seconds for each individual target. What I figured though was the time was compressed enough that I wasn't going to have time to actually mill it, pull out a calculator, dial in the range, and then once I got the range, go over and get my dope. What I did instead is I grabbed my Kestrel here, this is the Applied Ballistics Kestrel. This thing was a lifesaver throughout the entire match. Now it has a range estimation feature where I can go in, I can plug in what the estimated size of the target is, or what the actual size of the target is, and then it will allow me to scroll through the mil values, and it will demonstrate what the range to that target is based on what mil value I throw in there. So I went ahead and I went through that, and I built myself a kind of a rough table based on 50-yard increments on if I jump behind the scope, the 10-inch target, if it appears to be this many mils, I just run down the table and see this many mils was this many yards, and this is what my dope is going to be, my elevation of my windage for that target. So it would allow me to really quickly get up there, throw the scope on the target, measure it, and the measurement would automatically give me, I didn't really care about what the distance to the target was, I just cared about the dope I needed to shoot the target. So I could come over real quick, get the dope, and engage the target. This was a great plan. It worked well for the first target. It didn't work so well for the second target. So I got up there, hit the first target, which, believe it or not, was a no-value target. You didn't get any points for the first target. It just allowed you to go on to the second target. I hit the first target with my first shot, moved on to the second target. Now, I had 3 shots to hit that target. They gave you 2 shots for the first target, 3 shots for the second target, and unlimited for the third target. So with 3 shots, I went up, milled it, decided the target was 650 yards away, saw what my dope was, went with my holdover for that, and let loose a round. I saw nothing. Felt like a good shot. I didn't see any splash, I didn't see any impact. The target didn't go down because it's a LaRue popper, so it should have fallen down and then come back up if I hit it. Nothing at all. I thought, okay, that's kind of strange. Went ahead, tightened up my position a little better, loosed the next shot at it. Again, nothing. Didn't observe anything, didn't see any splash, didn't see any vapor trail, anything at all. So I went ahead and rethought, okay, maybe I screwed that up. We're talking about a 20-inch tall target at what I estimated was 650 yards, so it's a really big target to hit. So I went ahead and went bold. I came down, went to about my 450-yard dope, aimed at it. I figure worst comes to worst, I'd drop short and I'd see splash in the dirt. Sent it, saw nothing. That was my third round. I was out. Took a 0 for that stage. As I came off, the safety officer asked me what my estimate was for it. I told him 650. He said I was really close. They told us at the end what the ranges were. I apologize to you guys. I didn't actually write what the ranges for the unknown distance targets were. That really would have been a benefit, but again, I apologize. So I ended up, coming off that with nothing. There were guys that hit all 3 though, so it definitely was a stage that was doable, but because of the compressed time, you really had to have a plan. I think what got me was the wind got me. I was so concerned with making sure that I got the target size and I got the elevation. I didn't take the extra time that was needed to observe the wind and get a good wind call. So I think I just blew my wind call and slung them off the side of the target. That would have been about the only excuse for missing a 20-inch tall target at 650 yards. So that ended the last stage of the day. They were nice, and they allowed us that when we packed up all our stuff, they would go cold for a few minutes, because that stage actually shot over several roads that were being used on the property. They weren't public roads, they were just roads there on the property. So they go cold on the stage in between shooters so that we could unass the area and get back and get us some barbecue, sit down, relax in the barn, and wait until the scores were tabulated. And give us just really good time to relax, rehash what we'd gone through instead of sitting on a firing line and just sulking. So that was nice. Now once we got back to the barn, we grabbed some water. They had soft drinks. They had some really great barbecue there. If you guys haven't had North Carolina barbecue, it's a little bit different than what we get up here around Kentucky, Indiana area. It doesn't have the tomato sauce on it. It's more of a vinaigrette type sauce, but really good barbecue. That was really nice to have some grub like that at the end of what ended up being a pretty long shooting day. We relaxed. They went ahead and tabulated the scores, and they really had a sweet system going on. At the ranges, or at each one of the stages, when you shot, they would come back with paper. You would initial what your score was on the paper, verifying that. They would plug that into Kindles that they all had out on the firing lines. When they were done, the score was sent from the Kindles back to a main system that tabulated everything. It was a slick program that's both for Android and for iPhone. So when they tabulated the scores and they got back, they set up a wireless access point for us in the barn, and anybody that had a smartphone could go download the app. They could then sync with the local system, and they could actually view the scores as they were tabulated and as they were released without having to wait for the announcement, which is great because when you have to wait for everybody to get back in and everybody put stuff away, get some grub, and sit down for the award ceremony, it's really something to take up your time and to allow you to see your performance. And moreover, a lot of matches will just go through and they'll tell you how you did. The software on these stages allowed you to actually see how you ranked on each stage, how many points you got on each stage, how you ranked against other shooters on that stage, and then of course your final ranking and the points for everyone on their final ranking. So it was really slick, and then you could actually send the score sheet to yourself, or you could print it out from the app. And so I was able to do so and highlight my scores, and then I could go see on the stages that I actually did well on how I compared against everybody else, and I could see how horrible I did on the stages that I really bombed on. Now, I came out 34th out of 76 shooters that actually completed, so not as good as I like to do. I really like to try to finish in the top 10, but an upper half finish is okay. I really goofed Oregon up as well, so I'm not doing so well on my match shooting right now, and I've got some stuff I have to improve on. But an upper half finish gives me a little bit of hope. If I had finished in the bottom half, I would have kind of been a little bit more bummed. But the top 10 finishers, Brian Morgan took first place. Brian is from K&M Precision. Ryan Castle took second. Dustin Morris took third. Joe Wallace took fourth. Jim Saunders took fifth. Sean Burkholder took sixth. Dave Ostrowski, I'm sure I butchered that name, took seventh. Jim Gilliland took eighth. Isaac Frank, who's one of our guys from up here and runs Southern Indiana Precision, took 9th. And Brian Sykes took 10th. I'm only going to go through the top 10 because you can go over to Woody's, and I'm sure they have the scores posted there, and look at the extensive score sheet. There were a lot of guys out there and a lot of good support. All the shooters were really great. Woody's, anytime you have a match like this, there were originally 111 shooters registered for the match, I believe, and of course only 76 actually finished all the stages. But out of 111 shooters, that's a lot of bodies, a lot of stuff moving around. A lot of the fields of fire of the stages actually crisscrossed. Some of them crossed roads, some of them crossed other access points, some of them crossed parking lots. So it was really paramount that they have a good control on everything for safety's sake, and they did. They had an excellent system set up to where they were communicating back and forth. You could hear the radio traffic on when they were calling they needed to go cold because somebody needed to come across a road. They had multiple stages that would have to go cold when somebody would have to go out and repair a target or repaint a target, etc. And they really had a good handle on that. Personally, I only saw 2 big problems occur in my presence, and both were handled extremely professionally by the staff. One of them was a shooter issue on a stage when it was occurring, and they came out, they looked at it, they deemed that there wasn't really any safety violation on it, so they went ahead and ruled for the shooter, and they let him reshoot the whole stage. That was awesome. It was really great that they ruled for the shooter. And when I actually talked to Woody, he said that, he's in the business of entertainment. There's no reason for us to come out, drive 10 hours, and have a problem and get sent home on a DQ. So if it's not a safety-related issue, then it's something that reshoot it, go on, have fun. And I thought that was handled really, really professionally. The other issue was a shooter attitude issue between two shooters, and that was handled very well also. Guys, when you come to these matches, be polite, be respectful of your fellow shooters. If you have a problem with a fellow shooter, bring it up to range control, bring it up to the safety officers or the match director. Do not try to handle stuff yourself, because it can escalate, it can get really ugly. If it's something so small that you think you could just handle it with the shooter, then just let it go. If it's something really big, bring it up to the staff, because they can't handle it if they don't know about it. And the other problem that I witnessed actually festered for a whole day because it was not brought to the attention of the staff immediately. So be polite, be respectful. If you got a problem with something going on, bring it to the range staff, let them handle it. That's what they're there to do. You're there to shoot and have fun. That's really about all I had to say about it. We will leave a list of the sponsors for the whole event here at the end of the video, because I'm sure you don't want to listen to me just rattle on. It was great. Warsport was the title sponsor on it, and they actually put 2 guns on the prize table. Accuracy International ponied up cases of magazines. Everybody that registered for the event got 1 magazine when they registered. There were a bunch more magazines laying on the prize table when you went through. If you managed to get on the prize table, then you could pick up some more AI magazines, and that's great when you think about those are like 70 bucks a piece. They're only 5-round magazines, but still 70 bucks a piece for a magazine. That's great to have just in a goodie bag. Also, everybody that registered, of course, got a cool match t-shirt. Been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. It has really become a motto for me, much to my wife's displeasure, because I got a ton of t-shirts now. But overall, great match. A couple of things that I really did like, besides the scoring system, was the fact that before the match occurred, Woody sent out a pamphlet that outlined all the descriptions on the stages. When we actually arrived and we checked in, they gave us an updated pamphlet, because the range officers, or the RSOs, whatever you want to call them, safety officers, they actually shot the match the day before in the pouring rain, so of course that's always a good time to work out bugs, and they changed a couple of things. So they gave us updated pamphlets, and this is the other thing that I really like. Now, this sheet's got my chicken scratch all on it, but when we registered, they gave us a sheet that had the ranges for all the known distance targets out there. All the changes from the original pamphlet were on the sheet as well, so you could go through and you could scribble in your pamphlet and update the different time hacks and the different ranges. And also, what it gave me a chance to do is, as soon as we registered, I went and sat down with my ballistic computer and I scribbled in rough dope for all the targets. So that way I was good to go. If it was something where time was compressed and we had to get up and roll with it, I already had the dope written in, and I could go back in and really shooting the 243 with H4350. We didn't have enough of a temperature shift during the day for my dope to change appreciably at all, so this ended up being good for the entire weekend. So that was nice. It limits confusion. I've gone to matches before where the shooters don't have any direction on the stage until they actually get there, so it's difficult to get down in your head how you're going to run it. If you as a match director, if you're doing that to add difficulty to the stage, that's one thing. If you're not doing it with a specific purpose in mind, then it's nice to be able to give guys something that they can sit and they can read and mentally game out the stages in their head. So I really like that. A couple of pieces of equipment that really made my life easier over the couple of days shooting. One is the Kestrel. In times past, I relied on my iPhone and a separate Kestrel for ballistic solutions. I get the weather off the Kestrel, plug it into the iPhone, get the ballistic solution off the iPhone, and go back and forth. The Kestrel makes it so much easier. All I have to do is load the profile for the gun in the Kestrel. I dial in what the range is, and it reads off across the top of the Kestrel what my elevation is, and then it'll also give me a wind call depending upon how I set it up. Now on my Kestrel, I'll set it up to give me a 5 mile an hour and a 10 mile an hour wind call. So when I look at it, I've got both 5 mile an hour wind hold and 10 mile an hour wind hold for whatever I have my range dialed in. You also have the ability to set it up so you can raise up the Kestrel, you can capture the wind, and it will read out what the wind call is for that specific target. I feel that's slower, so I like my way, a little bit quicker, and then I'll take a manual reading off the wind and then decide how to apply my holds based on that. But the Kestrel made things so much quicker because I didn't have to juggle 2 devices. I could carry this around in my butt pack on my war belt and just pull it out whenever I got to a stage, run through, make sure I'm good for my dope, and roll on. The other piece of equipment, and we've already done a review on this, we just kicked that out earlier in the week, is the Tab Gear SAC, and SAC stands for Silent Ammo Carrier. And this thing was great just to be able to take my match ammo out of one of my plastic hard boxes, dump it into the inside pouch here, and I actually had this with malice clips clipped to the outside of my Eberlestock X3 pack. So I could grab ammo quickly to load my magazines. When I came off the line with my empty brass, there's a back pouch in here that I could throw the empty brass into, and that kept the empty brass separated from my live cartridges. It worked out really, really well. Thanks to Tony over at Tab Gear for sending that out and letting us do a review on it. Of course, it is made in the USA. They run about 50 bucks, and if you go check out our review video, there are links to where you can pick it up there, or go over to triadtactical.com and pick it up there. That was about it. The other equipment I use is pretty average equipment, just my Eberlestock X3 pack. It was nice to have the scabbard because we were working in a compressed environment in the back of that minivan and carrying a hard case. One of the other guys did have a hard case, and it was kind of always in the way because when the rifle wasn't in it, it's bouncing around on the back of the truck. When the rifle was in it, it's just big and bulky. I ran the X3. One of the other guys that rolled out there with us, he ran, I believe it was the G2. So we both had Eberlestock packs, and it just sliding the rifle into the padded scabbard and being able to just drop that in the back of the van saved us a considerable amount of room in there. I didn't really roll with the rifle in the scabbard a whole lot when we were moving around. Generally, I just threw the pack on my back and carried the rifle in my arms, or put it over my shoulder, but you know, the scabbard was there should I need to do it. We originally did it because we thought we were going to be hiking over the entire property and that we weren't going to be able to drive around in our vehicle. Had that been the case where we would have actually had to hike from the firing point to firing point, they were pretty spread out, the Eberlestock would have really been worth its weight in gold to be able to drop my rifle in there, keep my hands free. I carried a Camelback because really you get dehydrated even quickly. The Carolina weather was cold in the morning. I had on a bunch of extra layers. By late afternoon, we were stripped down to just t-shirt and pants, trying to stay cool. So you want to really hydrate because even when it's cool, you're still getting that moisture out of your body. You need to be putting it back because by the time you get into the afternoon heat, you may not have realized how much you've lost. The Camelback makes it really easy to keep up on that hydration. I also went ahead and put together a war belt to go out and shoot this, just a simple H harness. It was Condor stuff that I threw together with a butt pack on it, and that allowed me to carry my AICS magazines on the side and my handgun magazines in high-speed gear tacos. Those worked great because they were at hand. It was easy for me to reload, to shuffle stuff around, and to keep my magazines quick at hand because there were a couple of stages where you had to reload under time. That worked great. It allowed me also to hang my Safariland holster in the drop leg from the other side. I really don't like running drop legs because they are slower than regular belt holsters, but in this case I knew I would be running the Eberlestock pack on my back, and the drop holster gets it down below the hip belt on the pack so things aren't hanging up. So that worked really well. Altogether, it was a great match. It was fun enough out there, and Woody's was professional enough that me and my shooting partner are really trying to figure out a way to get back down there and shoot one of their DMR matches. They've got a really nice facility, a great area to shoot on. And as I said, they're just really professional. They make it easy to have fun down there. Although I didn't do the greatest, I had a blast, and the most important thing about this is through shooting the match, I learned where my deficiencies were. I could see what I was doing wrong, and now I know what to change in my training program and how to improve next time. Anytime you come away from a match knowing how to improve yourself as a shooter, that's a win no matter where you placed in the match. That's about all we have on the Woody's match. This is kind of disjointed, kind of rambling, but if you want a more concise breakdown on it, go ahead and check out the post on Woody's match on our website, and we'll also leave a link to that down in the description below. If you got any questions or comments about Woody's match or about this video, please leave it in the comment section below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, no matter if you're doing it at a match or just training out in your backyard, get out and shoot!